In this video, I'm going to be showing you all the updates I made to the lighthouses in North Carolina for this game, starting with the Currituck Beach Lighthouse, also known as the Corolla Lighthouse, or just the Currituck Lighthouse. This is the Corolla station that I built. In the future, I'm actually going to make train station buildings from scratch that will have a large entrance area and parking. Right now, this is just a generic filler until I can actually start making that. Anyway, this is the Currituck Beach Lighthouse. The earlier one I made was too fat at the base, but this one's more to scale. The glass textures are actually reflective, which is one thing I like about this game. It seems as though in Blender, there's a lot more that you can do with textures than in Gmax. So I was actually able to make it look like it had a lot of bricks inside it, which is something that I struggled to do when making the original one. Now I'm just gotta make sure it's facing the correct way. Now let's see if the flash characteristic is correct. It's supposed to flash on for 3 seconds and off for 17 seconds. Alright, now we got some others to visit, but first, I'd like you to know that I do take requests for making lighthouses. Now, so far the only request I have received was for the Vision Jam Lighthouse, which is in India. I did actually start working on it years back, but because I wasn't that good at making lighthouses back then, it didn't look too well, so I decided to wait until I got a little bit better at it. But now that I've perfected my craft, I might actually start working on it in the future. Those tracks that you just saw were the storage tracks for Shinkansen trains that are currently out of service or currently being stored. New arrivals are also delivered onto these tracks and await being assigned their destinations. Now we're continuing further south. The tracks on the far right are Amtrak tracks. It is an Amtrak line that runs from Virginia Beach to Raleigh via Nags Head. At first I was going to make it a maglev, but I did a poll to see what types of trains you wanted to see going between those two locations, and the biggest winner was Amtrak, so I decided to make it an Amtrak line. Now, in the future, I might actually make an Amtrak Shinkansen to run this line, because I found during a test run that it takes a really long time to get from Corolla to Nags Head via train. Well, via a conventional train. Anyway, the tracks are as straight as I could make them, but the islands are very curved, so there are some sections where it just goes diagonally down the island until we go as far as we can get without hitting the coastline, and then it just curves toward the other coastline and continues going diagonally down the coast. That was pretty much the only way to keep the track straight. We are now approaching the town of Nags Head. Now, of all the other towns served on this line, Nags Head actually has pretty much the biggest population, so I actually think I may have made a mistake in making this a local-only station that also is served by Amtrak. I probably should have made it an express station too. There's some walkway bridges that go over North Carolina Highway 12 to reach the parking area. Nags Head Station is located very close to the Nags Head Shopping Center. Now, I couldn't find the actual stores that exist here, so I had to substitute a few of them. For example, I think that Walmart store was supposed to have been a Food Lion, which is a type of grocery store that only exists in places like North Carolina. It's kind of like North Carolina's version of Giant or ShopRite. But yeah, they didn't have that in this game. I guess not enough people know about it. Anyway, here's a section of track where North Carolina Highway 12 travels underneath the railroad for a few miles. And there is a large overpass for it. This is Whalebone Station, another town with a lot of pedestrians. But it was too close to add a new station, so I added an Amtrak station here. Which brings us to the next lighthouse we have to visit. This is actually the first one that I updated for Trainz 2019, and it is the Bodie Island Lighthouse, located on the northern portion of the Cape Hatteras National Seashore. But first, here's another bridge that goes over North Carolina Highway 12. I had to build a lot of these because there wasn't enough room for a railroad crossing. And really, you don't want those on a high-speed line anyway. Now, Bodie Island Lighthouse Road, which is the road that leads to the lighthouse, I had to do a bit of modification to fit under the high-speed line, and it goes uphill towards a railroad crossing to cross the Amtrak line. Because of that sharp curve and steep ramp, trucks likely won't be able to travel down this line. But I don't know if semi-truck drivers would need to use this road anyway, so that shouldn't really be that much of a problem. Small trucks, of course, can still use this road. Not entirely sure if that's the correct tree. I'm just guessing. It looks somewhat like the trees that exist there. Anyway, this is the first lighthouse that I made for Trainz 2019. So I probably didn't get the textures perfect, but I was still experimenting with them back then, obviously. Now, this lighthouse took me hours, days even, to export to the game because it kept complaining that it was too detailed and the game couldn't run it. So it took me a lot of tries to export this. Anyway, this one has a very unique flash characteristic. It turns on for 2.5 seconds, then off for 2.5 seconds, then on for 2.5 seconds, and off for 22.5 seconds. So let's see if it's doing that correctly. Now the windows don't look perfect because it was my first attempt at making windows. The textures are a bit too transparent, and while you can see through the glass just like you would expect, you can see through it a little bit too clearly. And there is no interior to the glass either. But the brick textures do look perfectly fine. I also made an interior for the watch room, but I don't do that anymore because it turns out that you can actually see the lens animation going through the interior when you can see inside it. The Amtrak tracks actually continue toward the main line from here, but I'm actually going to change that in the future. In the future, that's going to be the southern terminus, and there's going to be another station that you have to transfer to get to the mainland. Anyway, this is the Mark Basnight Bridge, which oddly enough still doesn't appear on Google Maps. If you go to Google Maps, it'll look like this bridge is still under construction, even though it's already been completed. Took me a lot of research to find this out, because it's still showing the older bridge that this one replaced on the map. Just like in real life, you can still see the lighthouse from the bridge. Now this is a fictional drawbridge I built that spans over the same stretch of water, It's named for the guy that designed the Bodie Island Lighthouse, Dexter Stetson, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. I'm not sure if I want to have ship traffic actually going through the bridge and having it lift and lower, because that's proven to be very difficult to program in this game. I actually do have one Trainz rail fanning video where I attempted this, and it turned out exactly as I expected, but it didn't get a lot of views, so I don't think it's really worth pursuing again. The Mark Basnight Bridge spans over the railroad and then comes back to rest on the ground on Hatteras Island. Hatteras Island actually used to be part of Bodie Island as well, but a hurricane actually flooded the island and split it into two sections. The northern section is now Bodie Island. This actually seems to happen a lot on the Outer Banks. Okay, here's an actual railroad crossing. I might have to remove this crossing in the future because the trains that I plan on running through here are a little bit faster than the ones that are currently going through here. And these TRC crossings seem to have a limit of 125 miles per hour. Any faster, if you move the controllers any further away, the gates won't be able to stay down long enough and they'll time out and start going up before the train gets to the crossing. That is a glitch I've noticed during certain tests. So, in the future, this crossing might be slated for removal. North Carolina Highway 12 seems to be a very zigzaggy highway, so it crisscrosses the railroad a lot of times because the railroad goes perfectly straight and the road just keeps curving over and under it. Here's another bridge that goes over North Carolina Highway 12. The road actually had to be lowered a little bit so that trucks would fit under it, which puts it at risk of being flooded because it's below sea level. I was trying to avoid that as much as possible. These catenary lines also carry power utility lines for locals in the area. Okay, there's a whole lot of nothing in this area because there's a lot of land to cover and I haven't finished laying the scenery here yet. So let's just skip to the town of Hatteras and the town of Buxton, where the Cape Hatteras Lighthouse is located. You know, I thought that it would take only an hour to cross the Outer Banks in a high-speed train, but even at 200 miles per hour, it takes hours to get through the state. North Carolina is a lot bigger than it looks in the map. Anyway, we're now on Hatteras Island near the Cape Hatteras Lighthouse. This is North Carolina Highway 12 again. This might actually be a pretty dangerous railroad crossing though, since there has trains slowing down for the station, but express trains that pass by without stopping. Hold on, let me change this really boring sand texture real quick. Some of these sand textures look a lot better in the preview than they do in the actual game. Anyway, I'm looking for a PBR texture. Those are the textures that I'm using most of the time now. They look a lot better in Trainz 2019. Let's use this one. Okay, that looks good. One slight problem though is that if you have tracks over this texture, they can be seen over the track. But that can be solved by just replacing the texture that's under the track. Anyway, if you make a left turn at this intersection, you'll be on Lighthouse Road, which leads towards the Cape Hatteras Lighthouse. Lighthouse Road also has a railroad crossing, which is next to the station for Buxton, which is near the Cape Hatteras Lighthouse. This crossing has overhead lights as well, so they shouldn't have too much of a trouble seeing it. It also has gates for blocking pedestrians as well, so that they only try to cross when it's safe, and there's a fence blocking them from trying to cross the tracks at other locations. Now, this is a TRC crossing, but I might have to get rid of this one too because overhead cantilevers don't work on TRC in Trainz 2019, especially if it has more than 2 sets of lights, and I don't know why. All of the 2-lane cantilevers don't work except for one of them that's on the download station. Anyway, Lighthouse Road continues this way. Still have to work on these textures a little bit. And we're at the Cape Hatteras Lighthouse. I had to substitute another building for the visitor center. Anyway, this is the lighthouse. Getting those stripes to appear correctly was not very easy. Anyway, I actually bothered to make an interior in this one just because I could. However, it's not that detailed. It only goes up to the first level of stairs. But it does have an interior. I actually managed to make it look somewhat like it's made of brick. But I'm going to use a new brick texture in the future because this one, the bricks look way too large. This lighthouse also was very difficult to export because of how detailed the watch room is. Let me see if I can show you those details. These details. The game had such a hard time running these details. Especially the railing used to prevent people from falling off the edge. It really threw a fit over those. Anyway, you can't see the lens inside it during the day because I don't know how to make it so that something animates at night but then stops animating during the day. I don't know if there's a way to do that without a script. I don't know how to script in this game yet. But anyway, this is what it looks like at night. It's not a perfect animation. It was my second attempt at animating something, so bear with me. I do need to redo this one in the future though because it keeps stopping at its last frame and that is ruining the timing. It's supposed to flash every 7.5 seconds, but if it keeps stopping like that, it's gonna ruin the timing and it might confuse sailors. So that definitely has to be fixed. I mean, in real life, the lens does get stuck sometimes in this lighthouse, so I guess it's somewhat realistic. The tracks go up a steep incline now because they had to cross over the Hatteras Inlet crab spawning sanctuary. I wanted to make sure this bridge was tall enough to fit shipping vessels under it so we wouldn't have to use a drawbridge, which would slow down traffic. As you can see, the tracks are getting way up there now. We're passing the town of Hatteras. Still going uphill. And now the tracks separate. I had to put a lot of track direction markers here because for some reason the train kept stopping here and then reversing. So I had to put all of these here just to make sure it would keep going. I even named one of them, "Please stop reversing on this track." Anyway, the track split from 4 tracks to 8 tracks to prepare to slow down for the next station, which is in Ocracoke Village. To get to Ocracoke Island from Hatteras Island, the tracks cross across the George H.W. Bush Memorial Bridge, a large bridge that links the 2 islands together. It's actually just 4 of a bridge that exists in, I think, Ireland. I think it's called the 4th Railway Bridge or something. Anyway. 4 2-track spans. Some new land had to be added to make room for this bridge that extends beyond the tip of Ocracoke Island. Anyway, the tracks are now starting to descend downhill. We don't want the tracks to be too tall because they might block the view of the Ocracoke Lighthouse. So they're going to descend back down to ground level before going to the station. At one time I had planned for the station to be underground, but then I thought maybe that wouldn't be a good idea here, since the Outer Banks are prone to flooding during hurricane season. So you probably want to keep the tracks uphill as much as possible. The tracks are starting to curve towards the northwest. Well, actually not northwest, more like southwest. And now they're starting to rejoin into an 8-track main line. And now we're in the town of Ocracoke Village. This is an express station, but now that I think about it, it probably should have just been a local, since Ocracoke Village does not have a lot of people living here, and most of them probably don't even have enough money to ride this train in the first place. But anyway, this is the Ocracoke Lighthouse. This lighthouse doesn't flash or rotate. It has a fixed light, which means it's just on. It does not turn on or off. It does not rotate at all. Anyway, the entrance is facing the wrong way, so I have to rotate it a little bit. Okay, real quick, we're gonna see what this lighthouse looks like at night. It may take a while for the game to register. There we go. A fixed white light. Well, white-ish. The windows also light up at night. I had a really hard time figuring out where the windows should go in this lighthouse because I could only find pictures of it from the same two angles. I could only find pictures of the west side and the east side. So I basically had to guess where the windows were supposed to go. Anyway, these tracks on the left belong to the North Carolina Department of Transportation. They run a shuttle service to the Cape Lookout Lighthouse from Ocracoke Village. The other 4 tracks continue south and are owned by the American Shinkansen. This is the Great Ocracoke Inlet Lift Bridge. I'm not really sure if a lift bridge was necessary here, but just in case, one was built. A 6-track lift bridge. This is a very long and featureless island that I did not place a station in because I could not find any towns on this island. So let's just skip this one for now. This is the Great Island Lift Bridge. Not sure if a lift bridge was necessary here, but it was just in case. Now we're on Great Island, the large island that Cape Lookout Lighthouse is located on. It used to be part of Hatteras Island, but a hurricane split that island into 3 sections due to flooding. Great Island is the island that the Cape Lookout Lighthouse is located on. Hatteras Island is where the town is located on. And it's also where the visitor center for the lighthouse is located on. And Shackleford Banks is where I placed the train station, because the tracks have to curve very widely in that area, and that was the only place where the station could go. For that reason, the shuttle line actually goes straight to the Cape Lookout Lighthouse. And I might build a monorail that links the 2 stations together in the future. Let's see, how far down this line do we have to go to get to the lighthouse? It's on the southern tip of the island. There we go, we're starting to approach it. The Cape Lookout Lighthouse, the lens for this lighthouse rotates twice as slowly as the Cape Hatteras Lighthouse. Instead of every 7.5 seconds, it flashes every 15 seconds. Now, this is one of the very few lighthouses in the United States that operates 24/7, which means it does not turn off during the day. It is unclear to me why. Anyway, here's the lighthouse. The textures don't look too good, to be honest. Hold on, let me make sure it's facing the right way. The black diamonds are supposed to be facing north and south, and the white ones face west to east. That tells you which way you're facing just by looking at the lighthouse. The door texture doesn't look exactly like how I expected it, and the bricks look kind of weird. I don't even know how to describe what that looks like. They look kind of fluffy or something. So that's not the texture I was going for. Now, rotating animations were pretty difficult for me to figure out how to do in Blender. So it's pretty much a miracle that I was even able to accomplish this. But one problem with it is that the animation stops at the very last frame, just like in the Cape Hatteras Lighthouse. I did recently find a solution that might work, so I'm probably going to end up overhauling that in the future. The windows don't look correct either, and that's probably because of a texture issue. Hold on, let me fix these texture issues. Alright, that looks way better than before. It doesn't look as fluffy as it did earlier. Now, one thing that I really don't like is that the beam of light actually casts a shadow, which is not how things work in the real life, obviously, but there's very little that you can accomplish in this game. Making a light that's visible during the day is one of those things that this game isn't really good at. Anyway, I'm going to look up this lighthouse on the map so I can make sure it's facing the correct way. Okay, so the entrance is located on the north-ish side of the lighthouse. That's all I needed to know, just to make sure it's facing the right way. Alright, and the entrance is facing the right way. By the way, in case you're wondering why the entrance is elevated like this, it used to be that there was an attached building, like an oil storage facility, that was the entrance to this lighthouse. The entrance was on the second floor, which is pretty common in North Carolina lighthouses, but a hurricane caused a flood that basically destroyed that building. So they had to build a wooden staircase that leads up to the lighthouse. I was planning on actually making that texture look like stairs, but I forgot to while making it. The textures look a little bit darker than I expected, but it's okay. Anyway, here is the lens. It is a DCB-224 aero beacon, which is basically an airport style beacon. These are pretty popular these days because they're a lot lower maintenance than the original glass lenses that the lighthouses used to use. Still have to work on that animation because, like I said earlier, it just stops at the last frame instead of continuing. That's definitely something that needs to be fixed. Man, it stops so abruptly. It's too noticeable. Like I said, though, I will find a fix to that, and I will okay, let's just see what it looks like at night. That looks great. The windows light up at night as well on some of these lighthouses. I only do that for ones that had the windows glowing on the reference pictures I was using. On some of the pictures I was using, the windows were illuminated at night, but on other ones they weren't. And this is what it looks like early in the morning. Now, I was actually quite surprised when I uploaded this lighthouse because the game did not complain about it being too detailed. Of course, the watch room doesn't have as many parts to it as on the Bodie Island and Cape Hatteras lighthouse, so I guess that goes without saying. Anyway, the NC dot line ends here, and if you continue down the line, at the very tip of Cape Lookout, there is a solar powered facility that provides power for the train. And from here you can still see the Cape Lookout Lighthouse. You know, now that I think about it, I probably could have placed the station here instead without the curve being too sharp, but Cape Lookout looked a lot sharper than that on the map. When actually making it in the game, it was a lot wider than I thought it would be. This is Lighthouse Bay. I did place a lift bridge here in case larger ships needed to get through here. However, I ran across a slight problem with this area because of the way the tracks are angled. You would have to turn your ship toward the shoals in order to go through the bridge and then turn the ship back. So that's probably not the best option. I may have to try to find another place to put the bridge in the future. I named this bridge the Black Diamond Bridge because you can see the black diamonds on the Cape Lookout Lighthouse from inside the train when riding across it, which was actually what I was going for. Alright, let's continue. Across Black Diamond Lift Bridge, we now find ourselves in the Shackleford Bank Station. A bridge from Harker's Island will actually take you to the station. Alright, let's continue further southwest. After Shackleford Banks, the train is going to go uphill once again in order to cross the bridge. This bridge, okay, these are some portals that I need to program in the future. Here is the bridge named the Queen Anne Bridge after the ship that was ambushed and sunken here. The ship that used to belong to, well, it didn't really belong to him, a pirate that actually stole it from the British Navy. And that was Blackbeard. Anyway, after crossing this bridge, the tracks are going to descend once again, but they're going to remain elevated. Now we're in the town of Atlantic Beach, which is another local station. I haven't really finished the scenery here, as you can see. It's still under construction. Here's the station. There's going to be a monorail that can take you to the mainland. The tracks end here because I haven't had any more scenery, so let's just go further south until we reach Bald Head Island. Now we're approaching Bald Head Lighthouse. If you look across the bay, you can also see the Oak Island Lighthouse in the distance. The Bald Head Lighthouse was decommissioned because it wasn't tall or bright enough to be seen far enough away and couldn't accurately mark the area. It used to mark the entrance to the Cape Fear River before it was deactivated. It also used to have an automatic radio beacon where, when a ship became in range, it would give you automatic instructions on how to get to your destination, but that was also deactivated. Even though it no longer serves as an active aid to navigation, however, it does still have a light inside it that turns on at night. The entrance is on the northwest facing side of the lighthouse. I would wager that the real lighthouse is nowhere near this shiny. Of course, I used a metallic texture to make it. I don't think there's any other texture you can use besides metallic or glass in this game. But like I said, I cannot find an extensive list of all the textures. Anyway, this is what it looks like at night. The windows also light up. And if you look in the distance, you can still see the Oak Island Lighthouse, which we'll get to in a moment. Alright, let's go over to the Oak Island Lighthouse located in Caswell Beach. This will be the southernmost stop for the Shinkansen line. Oh, gotta fix this one hole in the ocean. Okay, the Oak Island Lighthouse, just like the Cape Lookout Lighthouse, operates 24 hours a day. It flashes 4 times every 10 seconds. Just let me rotate it a little bit because it's not facing the right way. The entrance faces towards the northeastern-ish area of the island. The intercoastal waterway is on its left-hand side and the Atlantic Ocean is on its east-hand side. Now the textures did not turn out the way I had expected. Look at this. This is a mess. I don't even know what the game was trying to do with this. That does not look right. So obviously that has to be worked on before I can release this. Man, what in the world is this? So as it turns out, concrete textures are really hard to achieve in this game. Man, the texture for the front door also didn't turn out correctly. This looks like a mess. Okay, I'm gonna fix this real quick and then come back to it. Okay, the textures look a little bit better, but still not exactly the way I wanted them to. The doors look better than they did earlier. Still don't like how the beams of light cast a shadow, but what are you gonna do? The concrete looks really wet, and I'm not really sure why. I mean, I suppose if you built something this close to the ocean, it would get wet every once in a while, but still. Anyway, there's an outside light that turns on at night as well. Just showing you a few other features I added. That still doesn't look perfectly right. It looks like it's not even attached to it. I don't really know what to do about that. Look at that. The window doesn't even look like it's attached to it correctly. I don't know what this is. But this was the best I could get it in this game. There's also another outside light on the top layer. By the way, this is the second most powerful lighthouse in the United States and the most powerful in North Carolina. It's so powerful, in fact, that Coast Guard officials need to wear fire protectant suits when working on this light so that they don't get burned by it. You'll notice that only the reflectors on the top are on. That's because the ones on the bottom are for auxiliary purposes. They're only used if the ones on top stop working. Here's what it looks like at night. By the way, you have to be a certain minimum age before you can climb this lighthouse because it's very narrow inside, so rather than a regular staircase, there's a bunch of ship ladders that lead to the top. And obviously, you can't climb these ladders unless you're a certain age. From the top of the Island Lighthouse, you can very faintly see the Bald Head Lighthouse. Okay, this is another update I tried to make to the textures. It still looks incredibly wet for some reason. Like wet concrete or something. It's actually slightly more reflective than I expected too. I'm still not too experienced with texturing, so you can somewhat see the details in it. It still doesn't look entirely attached to it. But the windows actually do look like they're attached to it this time, so this is pretty much the best I could get it to look at this point. Well, that's all I have for this video, so don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to send any requests in, because I do take requests if I have the time to perform them, that is.